For those who don't know the truth concerning the history of communism and Marxist-Leninism, these are ideologies that were conceived from Talmudic Judaism. If you don't believe me, then I'll let this rabbi explain it to you.
During a lecture of a communist propaganda in the USSR, a speaker said, "In the capitalist world, a person A is always exploiting a person B, but under communism it is the other way around." In the capitalist world, each business has a direct relationship with its clients. If you buy my product, then the item goes to you and the money goes to me. Under communism, everything belongs to the government. You might be purchasing this product from my hands, but the item doesn't belong to me, and your payment does not go into my pocket. The money goes to the government, and then later government reimburses me for my work. But this is why the amount that I get for my work is not necessarily connected to the amount you paid for your purchase. So financial transactions under capitalism and communism might look the same. It's the same store, the same salesperson, but in reality they are different because of the government being the owner and because all the financial transactions are going not directly between two people, but through the government. How did they come up with this idea? Well, it came from Judaism.
This astonishing admission can be directly associated with the hundreds of millions of innocent deaths at the hands of Talmudic communist dictators throughout history. The Bolshevik Russian Revolution began in 1917 and was one of the most explosive political events throughout the entire 20th century. This violent revolution marked the end of the Romanov dynasty and centuries of Russian imperial rule. Economic hardship, food shortages, and government corruption all contributed to the disillusionment of the starving people. During the revolution, the Bolsheviks, led by leftist revolutionary Vladimir Lenin, seized power and utterly destroyed the tradition of Tsarist rule. The Bolsheviks would later become the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. The Russian Revolution paved the way for the rise of communism as an influential political belief system around the world. It set the stage for the rise of the Soviet Union as a world power that would go head-to-head with the United States during the Cold War. However, what many people may not be aware of is that this revolution was organized and financed by American Talmudic Jews, as exposed in the following video.
The U.S. State Department, in its 3-volume report on the origins of communism in Russia, published in 1931, reveals how Jewish-controlled German banks under the leadership of Max Warburg conspired as early as 1914 to send large payments to Lenin, Trotsky, and others in their attempts to bring down the Tsar. As part of this conspiracy, Jacob Schiff, head of the New York Jewish banking house of Kuhn Loeb, invested at least $20 million, which would be close to $1 billion today, toward the establishment of Bolshevism in Russia. In its article on socialism, the Jewish Encyclopedia, published in 1905, freely admits that Jews in Russia were ripe for revolution. In Russia, socialism, had become a movement of the Jewish masses. The later Encyclopedia Judaica tells us the communist movement and ideology played an important part in Jewish life, particularly in the 1920s and 1930s, and during and after World War II. The Judaica, in fact, presents an extensive list of the most powerful Jewish leaders of Bolshevism, which included Trotsky, Sverdlov, Zinoviev, Kamenev, Litvinov, Kaganovich, and many others. The Judaica also tells us just how many Jews filled the communist ranks. It says anti-Semitism drove the bulk of Russian Jewish youth into the ranks of the Bolshevik regime. When the white Russian patriots heroically attempted to regain their freedom from the Jews, the Judaica says compact Jewish masses were utilized by the Bolsheviks to suppress such counter-revolution. Clearly, Jews and native Russians were engaged in a death struggle over the destiny of Russia. Unfortunately, the Jewish masses won. A rare photo shows the First People's Commissariat. From left to right are Uritsky, Trotsky, Zinoviev, Sverdlov, and Kaganovich, all Jewish. In 1918, intelligence services of the Western powers were buzzing with reports that communism was an international conspiracy fomented by atheistic Jews. British, Dutch, American, and other intelligence reports confirmed that Jews filled the Bolshevik ranks and that as much as 75% of all Soviet commissars were Jewish. In the Illustrated Sunday Herald of February 8, 1920, Sir Winston Churchill commented on what had almost become public knowledge. There is no need to exaggerate the part played in the creation of Bolshevism by these international and for the most part atheistical Jews. It is certainly a very great one. In the decades following the revolution, the question became, how much influence do the Jews still exert on the Soviet experiment? Although many of the Jewish kingpins in Bolshevism perished in Stalinist purges in the late 30s, none other than Nikita Khrushchev gives us an eye-opening view of just how many Jews were still in the Soviet government. Speaking to a delegation of French socialists, Khrushchev admitted in 1956 the government has found in some of its departments a heavy concentration of Jewish people, upwards of 50% of the staff. Because communism has historically been top-heavy with Jews, the Soviet policy of so-called anti-Semitism, much protested by Jews in the West, may in reality be but a ploy to distract the world from communism's Jewish past. Although most Jews have indeed been removed from high-profile positions in the Soviet hierarchy over the last 30 years, still Jews remain highly favored when it comes to immigration to the prosperous West. Since World War II, more than 1 million Jews have been allowed to leave the Iron Curtain, sometimes in waves of up to 52,000 a year. This contrasts to the grim reality that if even one Gentile attempts to escape, he would be lucky to receive only 15 years in prison. Jews, then, have played an enormous role in the Soviet experiment. Yet, as the Jewish Encyclopedia, in its article on socialism, again tells us, the passion of many Jews to socialize the world was not confined to Russia. As peddlers of socialism, it tells us, Jews must be reckoned among the pioneers of the socialist parties in America. As a case in point, a flood of socialistic Jews entered the FDR administration and helped pioneer the New Deal for America. The Encyclopedia Judaica says Roosevelt's liberal policies endeared him to the Jewish community, which shared with him an overriding commitment to the welfare state. It is very significant that in letting left-wing Jews into his administration, FDR set in motion a conspiracy that was soon to have the gravest repercussions.
I wonder if any sharp thinkers noticed an intriguing word connection between what the narrator said near the end of the previous video and Mike Pompeo's CIA commentary. Here's what the previous narrator said.
In the decades following the revolution, the question became, how much influence do the Jews still exert on the Soviet experiment?
It was the word experiment that got my immediate attention, because Mike Pompeo also defined America as the American experiment.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like, we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
The question became, how much influence do the Jews still exert on the Soviet experiment?
The glory of the American experiment.
Jews, then, have played an enormous role in the Soviet experiment. As a case in point, a flood of socialistic Jews entered the FDR administration and helped pioneer the New Deal for America.
This got me thinking and wondering if there is a possible connection between the American and Russian experiments. And I came to the obvious conclusion that all U.S. governments since the infiltration of the FDR presidency, and perhaps well before then, have been under the authority and control of Talmudic, socialist, atheistic Jews. And this explains America's moral and social decay and its slippery slide into a Marxist, Leninist, communist utopia. Successive U.S. governments have been traitorous imposters who deliberately manipulated the perceptions of generational Americans, while managing to conceal their true agenda and intentions from U.S. citizens. This tactical persuasion has also been applied to the U.S. government and its socio-economic order, so as to prepare the nation and its people for the new Talmudic socialist utopia of the 21st century, under the rule and authority of the biblical Antichrist. This is not some weird science fiction script that I am sharing here. It's an absolute biblical fact that anyone with an ounce of discernment can see unfolding with their own eyes. This is absolutely real. Notice the exact same power and influence of socialistic Jews operating within the highest positions of the US and UK governments, and the conditions that enabled their predecessors to create and establish the Russian Revolution. Those same conditions are now evident today and did not happen by chance, but absolutely by design. Both governments are nothing more than proxies for the ruling Marxist Jews, who are, literally, hell-bent on overthrowing them, which by all accounts has unquestionably succeeded and will be fully revealed at the appointed time. These Talmudic commies have infiltrated all areas of the U.S. political, judicial, and social order to set in motion the downfall of America into a third-world oppressed system of enslavement. Jewish Rabbi Stephen Wise openly stated that some call it communism, but I call it Judaism. And that's because both communism and Judaism are inextricably linked. They are in fact one and the same political ideology. Just what will it take for Trump-supporting Christians to figure out the truth concerning his true beliefs and communist aspirations? Maybe some do understand and are in denial because they feel the need to hold on to any shred of hope that someone will save them from the horrors to come. But that belief is a snare unto their souls, because the only person that can save them, Jesus Christ, will not be returning until after the persecution of Bible-believing Christians by the devil and his chosen race of Talmudic Jews. Only then will Jesus Christ return to avenge their blood upon the inhabitants of the earth, as defined in Luke 18 verses 7 to 9, Isaiah 13, 8 to 11. The anti-Semitic tag that those who expose them are labeled with simply enables them to hide their communist manifesto behind a cloak of deception. The entire world needs to be under absolutely no illusions here, because these Luciferian sons of the devil mean business, and they have an unparalleled hatred for Jesus Christ and born-again Christians, as many are about to find out. And according to end times Bible prophecy, they're going to utterly destroy the majority of people and cities of this world, as defined in Isaiah 14 verse 12 to 17 and Daniel 7 verse 23. What I'm about to show you in the following clips should trigger the mind of every critical thinker that views this video. From my own perspective, I believe these clips are one of the most clear and compelling indications that the U.S. selections are, as many of us already know, to be controlled opposition. It's a fair comment to make that you would never expect both political parties in any election, not just in the U.S., to use the exact same wordage and slogans when running for the presidency. That would be crazy, right? Such a thing could never happen in a democratic country, because it just might give the indication that these opposing political parties are in fact the same political ideology behind their opposing smiles. The reality is that what you're going to see in the following clips is exactly what they want you to see. They know that society has become so dumbed down that most won't even get the cryptic message being directed at them, which in this case is that both parties are indeed the same political entity with different faces, in order to deceive the gullible masses.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetimes.
This will be may be the most important election that our country's ever had.
There's never been a more important tomorrow in modern electoral history of the United States than tomorrow, and that's not hyperbole.
We know what is on the line and what is the truly most important election of our lifetime.
This election is the most important election in our lifetimes, no matter what generation you come from.
I truly believe this is the most important election of our lifetimes.
This is, I think, going to be the most important election that we've ever had.
Really one of the most important elections in American history.
2008 is the most important election in our lifetime.
This is certainly the most important election in my lifetime.
This is the most important election you've ever voted in your entire life.
My fellow Americans, this is the most important election of our lifetime.
All these sources make this one of the most important elections in our history.
The election of 2004 is one of the most important, not just in our lives, but in our history.
In 2000, as we go into what I think is the most important election we've had in a generation.
In what will be, I am convinced, one of the most important elections we're likely to see for the next 50 years.
It's the most important election of my lifetime.
The one thing you and I agree on is the last election was perhaps as insignificant and uninteresting as any presidential election in our lifetimes.
Yes.
1996, in my opinion, is going to be the most important election of our lifetimes.
This is one of the most important elections in our lifetime. It may be the most important election in our lifetime.
The next election may be the most important one in 100 years.
In what is almost certain to be one of the most consequential elections, not only of our lifetimes, but of the post-World War II American period.
This is one of the most important elections in the history of the United States of America.
This is the single most important election in our lifetimes.
This is the most important election in history.
What this election is about, why this is the most important election of our lifetime.
Before one of the most important elections in the nearly 200 years history of our country.
This is the most important election in this nation in 50 years.
The most important of all choices will be made by the American people at the polls less than 3 months from tonight.
Asking the American people to make one of the most important decisions in their lifetime, because I think this election is one of the most vital in the history of America.
This time, vote like your whole world depended on it.
I think in many ways this election is more important than any 1932 or should be almost any in this century.
Perhaps, as Senator Kennedy has already indicated, the most important election in our history.
Never in the history of the country has it been as necessary for the Democrats to win an election as it is now. We are faced with a great decision on Tuesday, the most important decision, in my opinion, that's faced the country since the Civil War.
We face one of the great choices of history. My fellow citizens, I cannot tell a lie. This election is more important than any other in the history of our nation.
There you have it, both sides using the exact same wordage and phrases, and that's because they are controlled opposition. They have the same political ideology, but pretend to be in opposition. These corrupt political organizations get to fool the masses every 4 years, unbeknownst to the voters that the next president of Zion America was already selected decades ago. There is no Democrat and Republican political party, that's all smoke and mirrors. Trump is actually a lefty posing as a Republican.
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat.
It's the first campaign attack ad to take aim at Donald Trump, using his past words of support for the Democrats to skewer him.
Hillary Clinton, I think, is a terrific woman. I mean, I'm a little biased because I've known her for years. I think she really works hard, and I think she does a good job.
Do you identify more as a Democrat or a Republican?
Well, you'd be shocked if I said that in many cases I probably identify more as a Democrat. And I think you'd probably be shocked.
On social issues?
You know, it's interesting. I've been now around long. You know, I think of myself as a young guy, but I'm not so young anymore. And I've been around for a long time. And it just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans. Now, it shouldn't be that way. But if you go back, I mean, it just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats.
Bolshevik leader Vlad Lenin once said that there are no morals in politics. There's only expedience. A scoundrel may be of use to us just because he is a scoundrel. If that quote doesn't sum up the current state of world politics, then I don't know what will. Greedy men and women have sold their souls to the devil and their own people for monetary and material gain. Politics is a scam. It's institutionalized thuggery where the rich rule over the poor with the sole intention of stripping them of everything that they own and possess. This is what politics is really all about. This is who Trump, Biden, Harris, and Obama, etc. really are, and the common agenda that they have both been working towards while deceitfully appearing as opposing political parties. This is not even about politics. It's all about deception. Successive governments have continually deceived the American people in order to stall for time while they were busy establishing the end-time system of the beast and dismantling the U.S. from within its own government. There is only one authority that all U.S. politicians of any significance must pledge their allegiance to, and that's to the Antichrist synagogue of Satan, Talmudic State of Israel. The welfare and betterment of the Zionist state is their focus, not the U.S., nor the American people who are deceived into casting their votes for the next swamp rat to sit in the White House. Trump's America First is pure Orwellian doublespeak, because when opposing political parties express their full and unequivocal support for another nation over the welfare and needs of their own people, as well as sending soldiers to die in Talmudic banksters' wars as human sacrifices for their demonic gods, that's unmistakably defined as treason. For those who are not aware of this, let me show you this agenda in action.
Were I a Jew, I would be a Zionist. And my father pointed out to me, I did not need to be a Jew to be a Zionist. For I am. Israel is essential to the security of Jews worldwide.
I love Israel and honor and respect the Jewish faith and tradition. And it's important that we have a president who feels the same way. For me, respect and reverence for Judaism is personal. My daughter Ivanka and my son-in-law Jared are raising their children in the Jewish faith, always reminding me the important values and lessons we learn about leadership, resolve, and families in Jewish tradition. My administration will stand side by side with the Jewish people and Israel's leaders to continue strengthening the bridges that connect not only Jewish Americans and Israelis, but also all Americans and Israelis. Together, we will stand up to the enemies like Iran, bent on destroying Israel and her people. Together, we will make America and Israel safe again.
In the midst of uncertainty and turmoil, America's support for Israel's security must be rock solid. And as Iran continues to launch ballistic missiles, while it arms and funds its terrorist proxy Hezbollah, we must stand with Israel. As Hamas maintains its control of Gaza and fires rockets across Israel's southern border, we must stand with Israel.
Under President Trump's leadership, our NATO allies are paying more of their fair share toward our common defense than ever before. ISIS is on the run. We put Iran on notice. North Korea is isolated like never before, and with an issue that Jack cared deeply about all of his life. Under President Donald Trump, if the world knows nothing else, the world knows this: America stands with Israel. As the President said this afternoon, he was delivering on a long-held American promise. It's in the best interest of the United States. But more than 2 decades ago, actually, Congress had passed a law that required the President to move our embassy to Jerusalem and recognize that city as the capital of Israel. But successive administrations failed to do so, even when it meant breaking a promise that they'd made to the American people. In recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, President Trump also announced plans to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
I have said to people when they ask me,
if this capital crumbled to the ground, the one thing that would remain is our commitment to our aid. And I don't even call it aid, our cooperation with Israel. That's fundamental to fundamental.
We will stand for a strong, free, democratic, and prosperous Middle East, and a prosperous Israel at the heart of that Middle East. The more the Middle East embraces Israel, the brighter the future will be. It's really quite simple. We stand with Israel. We stand for peace in the Holy Land. We stand with the great Israeli people. And we stand for the unbreakable bond between our two great nations, rooted in our shared traditions of freedom and equality.
Do you fully understand what you have just witnessed in those videos and how they relate to Pompeo's American experiment? If not, then let me help you figure it out. Those clips absolutely and undeniably prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Talmudic Ashkenazi Jews have not only infiltrated the U.S. government, they actually own and control it. Americans need to wake up to the fact that they are the 21st century Talmudic Jewish experiment. The plot to overthrow the U.S. government and establish Bolshevik communism has been ongoing for decades and is almost complete. It's a little-known fact that many of the rich and famous are actually related. Various superstars of the music and movie industries are related to U.S. presidents, senior political figureheads, and leading industrialists. These generational satanic bloodlines interbreed in order to keep their vast wealth and historical agendas hidden within their own dynasties.
Now that we know Vice President Dick Cheney and Senator Barack Obama are distant cousins, the New York Post decided to check into the genealogy of President Bush, and his family tree has people talking. Early Show national correspondent Tracy Smith has the story of George W. Bush's many relations.
My honor to bring to you the 41st president, a great dad, George H.W. Bush.
We all know his father, but what about his cousins? Check out this family tree, done with research by Ancestry.com.
What would you say if I told you he's related to all of those people?
That you're wrong.
Oh, no, I'm not. Let me take you through this, branch by branch.
The 101st Airborne Division, air assault.
Vice President Dick Cheney, the man who's only a heartbeat away from the presidency, is actually a blood relation. He's President Bush's 9th cousin once removed. Cheney's cousin Barack Obama is also Bush's 11th cousin and the 9th cousin of Brad Pitt. But we're only just getting started. President Lincoln was President Bush's 7th cousin 5 times removed, and Bush shared more than just a ballot with John Kerry. That's right, they're 9th cousins twice removed.
Really? What do you think of that?
Yeah, they have the same chin.
There's also royalty in the Bush bloodline. Princess Diana was Bush's 11th cousin twice removed. And then there's this bombshell.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
Sure, she may have been singing to JFK, but what about GWB? He is, after all, her 9th cousin 3 times removed.
Maybe it's the eyebrows. I think
They have the same eyebrows?
He's also related to Playboy founder Hugh Hefner, even Pocahontas, and Vlad the Impaler. Trace the family tree far enough, and you get Madonna, Celine Dion, and Tom Hanks.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
After all, genealogy can sometimes be like a box of chocolates. You never know who you're going to get. For The Early Show, Tracy Smith, no relation to George Bush.
The Russian Revolution was the brutal enforcement of Bolshevik communism on the impoverished and completely worn-out masses. And thus shall the American experiment be likewise, and likewise under the control and leadership of merciless Talmudic Jews that have been stealthily operating within both U.S. political parties.
Jews, then, have played an enormous role in the Soviet experiment. Yet, as the Jewish Encyclopedia, in its article on socialism, again tells us, the passion of many Jews to socialize the world was not confined to Russia. As peddlers of socialism, it tells us, Jews must be reckoned among the pioneers of the socialist parties in America.
The narrator further stated that a flood of these socialistic Jews had infiltrated the FDR administration, which enabled them to pioneer what they have termed in the video as a New Deal for America.
As a case in point, a flood of socialistic Jews entered the FDR administration and helped pioneer the New Deal for America.
What that actually tells us is that communistic Jews had full control and power over the affairs and operations of the FDR administration and the American people. In reality, these socialistic Jews pioneered a deal with the U.S. government to fully communize the American people, and subsequent U.S. governments have been fully complicit in this same Bolshevik agenda. It's surely no coincidence that these cunning Ashkenazi Jews devised the plans for destruction of both nations and the genocide of their populations. This brings me back to the connection between the Bolshevik Russian and American experiments. The definition of the word refers to a test under controlled conditions that is made to demonstrate a known truth. In this case, the communization of America and what will be left of her people. This is what the references to the Russian and American experiments actually mean, and be under no illusions whatsoever regarding the Trump administration and successive traitorous governments in forwarding this agenda. Pompeo knows exactly what the American experiment is, as he knows the communization of America is done and dusted.
Jews, then, have played an enormous role in the Soviet experiment.
It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
And to think that this was continually progressing under successive traitorous governments, without any or little acknowledgement from the general population, and now it's too late. And aside from that fact, these things must happen in accordance with Bible prophecy. Any smart critical thinker should be able to figure out that the U.S. political arena is in fact a two-party political deception. I've said many times that voting is meaningless when money decides the outcome of election. The facts are that both political parties are controlled opposition, the definition of which is as follows. Controlled opposition refers to a strategy in which an individual, organization, or movement appears to be in opposition to a particular faction or ideology, but is in fact covertly controlled or influenced by that faction or a third party. This definition describes every government throughout the entire world that is under the control of Talmudic Ashkenazi Jews. The following video clip shows how the political two-party opposition deception works, and this is the methodology that the Luciferian Talmudists have used to conceal their agenda from the American people.
The year is 1917, and Representative Oscar Callaway enters a disturbing statement into the U.S. congressional record. The statement reveals why J.P. Morgan interests hired 12 high-ranking news managers. The 12 were asked to determine the most influential newspapers in America. They were to figure out how many news organizations it would take to control generally the policy of the daily press of the United States. The 12 found it was only necessary to purchase the control of 25 of the greatest papers. An agreement was reached. The policy of the papers was bought, and an editor was placed at each paper to ensure that all published information was in keeping with the new policy. Soon, that policy would be defined by a front group formed by J.P. Morgan and his colleagues. In fact, Morgan's personal attorney was founding president of the organization, the Council on Foreign Relations. Today, the CFR maintains that its goal is to increase America's understanding of the world. However, the actual objective of this highly exclusive club is revealed by the rare admissions of the insiders themselves. In the early 60s, a Georgetown University professor collects information for a book favorable to the network of powerful men who founded the CFR. For 2 years, Professor Carroll Quigley is allowed to examine the confidential papers and secret records of this network. Quigley reveals that these men aim to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. In short, they seek total and quiet control of the entire world. And the CFR is their most visible conduit for carrying out that agenda. CFR members include America's wealthiest tycoons, as well as the highly placed elite in government, academic institutions, tax-exempt foundations, and the establishment media. Ruling Class Journalists, written by Richard Harwood, describes the CFR membership as the ruling establishment in the United States. The Washington Post article boasted that news reporters who are CFR members do not merely analyze and interpret foreign policy for the United States, they help make it. Who are these policymakers? Many of their faces are familiar. NBC's Tom Brokaw, CBS's Dan Rather, ABC's Barbara Walters, Jim Lehrer of PBS, William F. Buckley of National Review, media mogul Rupert Murdoch, owner of the giant multifaceted News Corporation. These media heavyweights, and many others like them, are members of the CFR. Powerful corporations are also invited to become members. At the close of the 20th century, CFR influence presided over far-reaching consolidations of media control. In 1995, CFR members Michael Eisner of Disney and ABC's Thomas Murphy merged their media empires. Soon after the merger, the Disney-ABC empire becomes a CFR corporate member. In the year 2000, the world's largest internet service provider, America Online, joins forces with Time Warner, one of the world's largest news organizations. The CEOs favoring the move are CNN's Thomas Johnson and Time Warner's Gerald Levin, both CFR members. Once again, another media giant is created under the shadow of CFR influence. Today, an elite handful of individuals define the agendas that are supported by the empire of establishment news.
Unfortunately, for many nations and people, we have reached a point in time when the Talmudic communist utopia is going to be established throughout the entire world under the Noahide beheading laws. It's highly obvious that although many souls are beginning to figure out what is really happening, most haven't got a clue and are content to sit back and absorb their daily programming from their flat-screen TVs. As this video draws to its conclusion, it's important to fully understand the horrors that are coming to our own front doors in the not-too-distant future. And let me be clear on this. These events are coming much, much sooner than many seem to realize or understand. If you're not a born-again Christian, I absolutely urge you to consider joining us. There is only one way out of this mess, and it's through the salvation of Jesus Christ, our Messiah. Failure to overcome the beast and its antichrist system is not an option. All born-again Christians must fulfill the prophecy of the overcomers contained within the book of Revelation. I sincerely hope that this video will help some to form a deeper understanding regarding the dire situation that humanity is facing. One of the main directives of the Antichrist Talmudists is to cull a vast portion of humans in order to control the rest under the cloud system of the beast. Time is short, my friends, and eternity is not. Now is the time to seek God for those who are undecided while that opportunity exists, because that possibility will not always be there.
As he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. and woe unto them that are with child in those days. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then, if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not.
Do you think that they exist? Do you think that they exist?
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat.
Do you think that they exist?
Thank you for watching, and God bless.